Hi, I'm Calum Bishop, and I was the psychology student in our Psych Stats collaboration, and I worked with stats students Cindy Wong and Daniel Bunning. Basically, the field of study we were talking about is retention, more specifically quantitative retention between males and females at LFA. So the first experiment we kind of looked at and spun off of is an exploratorium experiment that Miss Jones actually used with the psychology kids in class, and it gave us a certain amount of time to look at a group of objects clustered together, and they were somewhat related, some of them were, and then remember them recall them basically. And we kind of spun off that and copied that in a sense, but instead of using objects, we used quantitative numbers. The next experiment we looked at was less of one experiment, more of a collaboration. It's kind of a summary of early studies related to retention. And it's from Kansas State University. It's written by a professor, and it kind of gave us an idea of what we should be looking out for when studying retention. So this is a basic outline of our hypothesis, methodology, and ethics for this experiment. So we believe that if we test the sample population for their quantitative retention, then the results should be the same for both males and females. Basically, we believe that there would be no difference whatsoever, which is just the natural belief. And methodology, just to summarize, we randomly selected students, we randomly created a 9x6 chart of numbers, and we had a little problem with non-response after we contacted people, as I'm sure most groups did. But we made do, and we tested them. We gave each individual 2 minutes to memorize the numbers on a sheet, and then 1 minute to write those numbers back down and recall them. And then our stats people analyzed them. And ethics, basic ethics, email each randomly selected student. In the email, outline their schedule. And once their portion is done, we kind of let them know what we were looking for. So next is Daniel with the stats analysis.
Alright, so we originally kind of wanted to see if we could prove that the stereotype that males are better than females in terms of a quantitative standpoint was false. So we just think it's kind of an irrelevant and not true stereotype. So we decided that our null hypothesis would be that the true number of random integers memorized by male students at LFA minus the true number, or the mean number of random integers memorized by female students would end up being 0. We chose a significance level of 0.05. So we did a 2-sample t-test, and it was a random selection. That's how we found most of our test subjects. We plotted to figure out whether it was normal, because unfortunately we did not have more than 30 to use the central limit theorem. When we plotted, we figured out that there's no distinct outliers or strong skews, so we decided we could go forward with the t-test. And then independently, there are more than 80 boys and 80 girls at LFA, so 8 times 10 was fine. It could work out. Additionally, one test did not influence the others because each of them were done in a separate testing environment. When we ended up calculating it, interestingly enough, actually, the means turned out exactly the same, which kind of created an interesting thing because the standard deviation of both of them were actually different. For males, the standard deviation was 2.83, and for females, the standard deviation was, reverse that. For females, the standard deviation was 2.83. For males, the standard deviation was 1.85. We ended up concluding that the p-value was 1 because the means ended up being 0, so it ended up creating a p-value of 1, and that was much greater than our significance level of 0.05. So due to that, we failed to reject the null hypothesis, and we conclude that we did not have enough evidence that male and female students at LFA have different ability to memorize random integers.
So on the screen now is the statistics work for our project that Cindy and Daniel worked on. And Daniel was just describing this, but we completely forgot to put the VF on while he was recording, so I'm giving it to you now. So to conclude, as Daniel said before, there's no evidence to suggest that either males or females are better or worse at retaining numbers. And a couple final thoughts. I think if we could do this experiment a little bit differently, and this is actually in our original plan, we would like to not only test them right after they saw the sheet, but a day or two later to see what they retained over time. Due to non-response issues and the fact that we had a couple group members sick, including myself, we couldn't really do that, but we are still very happy with how our experiment ended up.